Hey, how's it going, YouTube? Thank you guys so much for joining, and welcome back to another video on Magswap Gaming. In this one, what I'm going to be doing is just go to my settings and show you everything that I got. I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you guys have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. I have a lot of previous guides that cover some of this stuff, so be sure to check that out. I'll go ahead and leave the playlist down below. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so my layout preset, what I've been running is instant melee. I have paddles on the back, so this is just good for me. I just have my top left paddle as jump, top right is B for crouch, bottom left is Y, and bottom right is X for reload. And that's just my personal setup. I really like it this way and it feels good. If you do have paddles, I'd recommend this. If not, I would recommend things like jump shoulder, button ping is okay, reverse bumper. I want to say there was one more. I think stick jumper is another one I've heard people like as well. But then you have B as your crouch. So really the number one preset, if you do not have paddles, that I would recommend is jump shoulder. Basically anything with your jump or slide on something that you can hit without having to move your fingers too much. That's probably the best thing to have in this game just because of the high movement, the verticality, so on and so forth. But yeah, that's what I would do. Moving on, vibration off, personal preference. A lot of people swear by this. I don't really enjoy having it, at least anymore. But, won't get into that. Aim response curve. I plan on making a video. If it hasn't already come up, I'm going to describe all three curves, linear, classic, and exponential. Linear, I would recommend for people who play the game a lot and who really want their reticle like exactly where they want it. This can get a little bit tricky. It's a lot more responsive and it's a little finicky, and you basically have to either practice with it a bunch or you have to do a little bit of a workaround, which I will get into here in the near future. Classic is another really good one. I think it's the second best. A lot of people, including Zytif, run Classic, and you can probably end up actually being more successful with it. I just personally don't like it as much just because I don't feel like I have as much control. But at the same time, you can hit a lot more acrobatic shots with Classic, and you can put more pressure on the stick, and it won't penalize you, so to speak. But again, I'll go into a bigger response curve video in the near future. Exponential is default, and I believe it's the easiest just because you can press the stick more, and this high pressure situations where you're flinging it everywhere, and it won't penalize you as much because it's not as responsive until it ramps up, and then it'll actually cross over and be more responsive at a higher threshold. Again, that probably doesn't make any sense until you see the charts, which I will do in the near future. Input smoothing, I have it off. If you have it on, it sort of feels like there's a delay, and it'll kind of feel like the reticle will keep moving even after you stop touching the stick, so I'd recommend keeping it off. Here are my settings if you want to check them out. And by the way, I keep all of these at the exact same except for the right stick dead zone, which I'll get into here in a sec. But everything is the exact same. Granted, I would recommend maybe modifying it a little bit, especially if you don't like it as fast as 100. But to me, 100 actually feels a little slow, so that's why I keep it at 100. Also, if you change your FOV, that could change your sensitivity as well. But 75, 100 feels good with 60 ADS. 70, I haven't really sniped or used the Dragonfly a lot with, so I just kept it at default, and it's been okay. But maybe I'll get a little bit more into it here in the future. Vertical and horizontal extra speed. These both play off of the horizontal and vertical. So with these two being here, I like it at 20. If it was below that, I might put that up. But yeah, if you guys are curious what any of these advanced sliders are, I do have a video, so be sure to check that out. Mixed with all of that stuff, the extra speed time, I have it to 0.35. The reason why I don't have it on delay is because as soon as the delay ends, that period of time, it instantly jumps up to the extra speed. I don't like it when it instantly jumps because sometimes it can get a little bit hard to control. So I have it as 0.35 to not only have a delay to where when I'm fighting close quarters and I'm moving back and forth quickly, so it doesn't kick in instantly and mess it up, but it's also, if it does, it's very gradual. So the chances of me messing up my actual placement, it gets minimized. But I still want that extra speed to kick in when I'm running up a building or I'm trying to do any other movement. It gives me a faster way to basically evade. ADS stuff, I don't have any of that on just because I feel pretty comfortable with the 60 ADS. And then down here to the dead zones and threshold, this is what I was wanting to get into. A lot of these are personal preference, especially if you have any stick drift. That could, change your numbers. The reason why I have this set at 13 is not only because of my personal controller, where the dead zone is set to, but I bumped it up because I like to run linear. Linear is more responsive. It kicks in quicker. The more you put pressure on it, it's a direct rate to your movement. Again, I'll go into the response curves, but basically I bumped this up to make it a little less responsive, a little less touchy, but I still have a lot more control over it. The reason why it's at 13 is just because if I bump it down or I bump it up, it just feels off, so I keep it at 13. Outer threshold, the reason why I don't have it set to 0 is there's this really weird thing where if it's at 0, notice how the left is normal, but if I move to the right, it's slow. Not exactly sure why that's the case, but you can avoid doing this by just setting that threshold value to 1. And if you're curious what the outer threshold does, again, you can check out the advanced video. Basically, the higher it is, the quicker that your outer threshold gets hit, meaning the quicker your extra speed actually activates. All right, for the rest of this, I'm just going to scroll through. All of the rest of these options are personal preference. I have this stuff set to toggle just because I played with it pretty much the whole time. Auto sprint I have on just because it is really a pain in the butt to constantly press your sprint. At least on controller it is, and it can kind of wear out your thumb a little bit. Automatic vault, I have set that to on. This has messed me up, so if you can get used to vaulting and it's like a quick response when you hit it, go ahead. But the amount of times this has helped me versus hurt me, it doesn't really outweigh each other. So anyway, I have that set to on. Inventory wheel mode set to toggle. This at short delay. A couple people swear by long delay, which you don't have to do as much math, but for some reason I like to see a few numbers here and there. So anyway, I have that to set to that. The inventory wheel after you drop it is set to on. Just cancels out one of the button presses. And then you can see the rest of these. I believe the rest of these numbers are default, except for the display HUD, X and Y. All that does is pull in your HUD a little bit. If you increased it, it would go closer toward the edge and get a little bit larger. All right, moving on. Field of view. I do have a video on this, and I show the differences between it. I would recommend if you can do 105 of your field of view and you can still see really far and you can still hit the longer range targets, go right ahead. It's really not that much different than 100. I just set mine to 100 and it feels pretty good there. And yeah, I just haven't changed it since then. But I would definitely recommend turning it up from default just because you can see more than on the sides. Brightness just set to 60. It just wasn't something I tested out. I always set my games to a little bit more than default. Audio I haven't messed with. I'm not sure which one is actually better. The audio to me is perfectly fine. I can always hear where people are, so I haven't changed that. The only thing here that I have changed is color blindness set to Deuteropia. I do have a video on this, so you can check that out. It just changes a few things like your reticle, the health bar, and the skull that pops up after an elimination, along with the other colorblind advantages as well. And I don't believe I have anything set to here. Anyway, that's it. Thank you guys for sticking around. Again, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I know I kind of went through pretty fast, but that's just because I do have other videos explaining some of this stuff. The response curve, I do have a video coming up for that in the future. But again, if you're just curious, what should you run? Exponential, probably for the brand new beginners. If you're getting a little bit more comfortable, go classic, because this is a really good response curve and it's not too different from exponential. This actually feels a little bit more responsive than that. But when I run either classic or exponential, what I do is I take this value that's at 13 and put it down to 5, just because I want to get as much response as I can. The only thing when I run linear, I bump that up to 13. But all of these other values, I keep the exact same, just because I have this set to 100. It already feels kind of slow to me. So the fact that that's the maximum, I feel like they need to change that and bump that up. But anyway, I said I'd finish it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate the support. Take care. Bye.